The 136th edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been, there ever will be.
Eight up freehand, King rights the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot, good, off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout, but the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores.
With 20 seconds left to play, goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul.
Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
The Tar Heels are the national dadgum champions.
And that's what it takes when you big time games. You got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. It's been about a little over a week or so since we last talked to you, but we're back, and we've got a list of fun topics to talk about. First off, Anthony, just want to check in on, buddy. How you doing?
Hanging in there, ready to get back to some form of sports. And the good news is that we've at least got NASCAR coming up this weekend. So I'm somewhat excited that sports are starting to come back. But other than that, I mean, it's just getting a little boring. Got to admit that, but always like when we get a chance to talk some Carolina basketball.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. NASCAR is coming back, starting full swing this weekend, and the NBA is itching closer to a return. Baseball is supposed to have a proposal to their players by the end of the week, so we could have sports back by at least, and probably July is probably where we're at right now, but, I'm with you. I've gotten pretty bored of the whole sitting at home with no sports to watch, but whenever you get a chance to talk Carolina basketball, it does lift the spirits, and the first thing we're going to really just talk about is that the Carolina's recruiting class, 24/7 Sports finalized their recruiting rankings last week with Caleb Love getting bumped up in the rankings. It moved Carolina's class up from 3rd to 2nd. They, of course, finish in front of the arch rival Duke Blue Devils from 8 miles down the road. And Anthony, the fan base, of course, really loved having the recruiting class, finish in front of Duke, finish in front of Coach K. It also is going to add even more pressure on these kids to help get Carolina back to national prominence, and there was already enough pressure as there is with the program going 14-19 the year before, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's still ultimately a really good thing. Just a couple of years removed from when most people were saying Roy had lost his touch, and it's not just the people that are always looking to criticize Roy. Those were people that are national guys that were kind of questioning if Carolina would ever get back to recruiting on the level that we saw them for, the previous 20, 30 years. Now Carolina's back, look, I think that this is a huge statement. Part of it is the fact that Duke's class is not really as good as it's been in the past. That's due to a lot of different things, and something that we saw in this class that I think, kind of helps to even strengthen this class a little bit more for Carolina is the fact that we saw a lot of top-name guys that were looking to stay in state with their home teams, like Zaire Williams, or just guys that were really trying to find spots where they could be the number one guy. For the longest time, the best thing to do was to team up with all these guys in one big, giant class and try to see if you can win a national championship. Guys are starting to realize now that that's just not really the best way to do things for them because it doesn't always guarantee a national championship. And honestly, it can hurt your draft stock if you got that many really good players around you that take away playing time. So I think that this is a really good class for Carolina. We've talked about it in depth. And, it's always great to pass them in the recruiting rankings. But now the thing is, it's time to find out what these guys are made of. Because we saw last year that just because you're highly rated doesn't mean that guarantees success.
Yeah, I think you're spot on when it comes to that. Even though you've got a 5-star beside your name, and you maybe, in the case of Donovan Puff Johnson, you're the brother of a late or a former Carolina great, it doesn't automatically mean instant success on the basketball court, even though we're kind of in a situation where we are depending on that. We need Caleb Love to be everything that we're being told he is. We need Walker Kessler and Day'Ron Sharp to come in and make an impact on day one. And, that's going to be the fun thing, is seeing how they'll handle all of the pressure and moving forward. But I'm with you. It also really proves that, and we've been saying it ever since the NCAA got off campus from Carolina, Roy Williams never lost his ability to recruit top-end talent. The fact that you had an ongoing investigation that many thought was going to take banners down from the Dean Smith Center and postpone you from NCAA tournament play kept elite talented players away from Chapel Hill. Now that that's over, that's why you've seen Kobe White, you've seen Cole Anthony, Armando Bacot, now Caleb Love, and those guys flock back to Carolina because to get the chance to play for Roy Williams, for UNC, to play in the Carolina-Duke game, and everything that is about the Carolina basketball program, it's still attractive, even though we run our program a little bit differently. So that's the first topic. Secondly, we'll move on. Sunday was the another airing of the Last Dance documentary, but before that, ESPN kind of made it a whole MJ day, and the first thing that they showed, and looking back at MJ's legendary basketball career, was an old Carolina game from 1984 against Maryland at Cole Fieldhouse. This is, of course, the rock the cradle dunk that kind of put Jordan's athleticism and dunking ability on the map before he went on to do greater things in the NBA, winning the dunk contest in '88. And I kind of told you, like, hey, man, let's just try to check this thing out. I know it's Mother's Day, but let's watch it until we come here and talk about it. We both sat down, made time after spending time with our mothers to watch the game. And a lot of observations that came out of this game. Jordan was great in the final 4 minutes or so, but, whenever we thought about that game, you would have thought, oh, man, he dominated. And he didn't simply dominate for 40 minutes. Len Bias is everything that we were told he was back in the day for Maryland, and was at times the best player on the court. But I think the thing that stood out to me the most from the players that were on the court, Sam Perkins absolutely dominated the game if you looked at the stat sheet. But I never once got the feeling watching the game that, man, he was having the biggest impact on the game, which goes to a testament of Roy Williams, who wrote in his autobiography, Hard Work, that he could have 30 points and 15 rebounds and make you look effortless. We saw that in that game where he contributed with 26 points and 12 rebounds, but it wasn't like a Tyler Hansborough performance or a Shaw May performance. He just kind of did it quietly, yet effectively.
Yeah, his play really shocked me. Just from the fact that, he was just so dominant. And you just don't really hear him talked about like that because Michael was there, James Worthy was there in 82. That's who played with him down low. So he just kind of gets pushed back behind some of these really big names. But in this game, a game where they were needing a big name to step up and play well because Len Bias was doing that on the other end, it was Sam Perkins, not Michael Jordan, who did that. Now, again, like you said, Mike finished the game very well, of course had the dunk, but you just felt like when you needed something to go right in that game, Sam Perkins was the guy that was going to find a way to make it go right. The other thing that I thought, maybe that being someone that didn't watch games during that era and just hearing the history of Carolina basketball and how this guy's talked about, Brad Daugherty is a much better player, I think, than a lot of people give him credit for. Early in the game, he was probably the best player on the floor. Sam Perkins, of course, finished the game very well, but I think that, Brad Daugherty was just dominant early on. He was a guy that had the size inside. He was tall, but he also had the build. That was something that I noticed with Sam Perkins, Sam Perkins was as thin as a rail, where Brad Daugherty was a little bit bigger, but he also had a little bit of a shooting touch on him as well, where he could step away and knock a shot down. So I think he's a guy that probably doesn't get as much respect as he should. Part of that is probably because we, as guys that grew up in this generation, we don't really remember Brad Daugherty, the basketball player. We remember Brad Daugherty as the guy that was analyzing NASCAR and owning a race team. So, but I think that was a really good look at him. And there were so many other guys that would become very crucial parts of Carolina basketball that had really good games as well. Joe Wolf was a guy that I thought, wow, he looks really good. Of course, at the time, he was a freshman, and they said it during the broadcast when he had to come in at one point for Sam Perkins, who had to step out due to an injury. Of course, Perkins would come back in later. They were unbelievably shocked that there were two freshmen in the game. Now that's a normal thing that we see. That's every day in college basketball. There's teams that roll out 5 freshmen at a time. Some of the teams that are seen as the best in the country. So, but I thought that he was also one of those guys that was very interesting and showed how much Dean Smith and even some of his assistants, and we've seen it carry over with Roy, especially early in Roy's coaching career, how much they value having really good big men, and of course having a point guard that can get them the ball.
Yeah, and that's where I was wanting to take it. And Kenny Smith's still, the point guard. And we know a lot about Kenny Smith. Of course, you and I, as the guy that's on NBA, on TNT's coverage, analyzing the NBA, but was a very great college point guard. We didn't see him have a great game in this game against Maryland. He looked like the freshman guard that he was. But I put a tweet out during the game. He was the kind of guy that would thrive under the way Roy Williams runs his offense, because his mentality was, I'm going to get the ball and I'm going to go. Now, he looked like a guy who didn't quite figure out, okay, when to push and when not to push, but the simple fact of the matter was he could get down the court as quick as any guy that we've seen. I watched a game later that same day from the 08 ACC tournament with Ty Lawson. Ty Lawson was hurt in that game, I get that. Kenny Smith could probably beat him down the court then in 84. So, but and that was very noticeable. You were seeing the things that would make him a great point guard. The people that don't think that Brad Daugherty was a great player don't know what they're talking about. He didn't have a great NBA career, but he was number 1 pick by the Cleveland Cavaliers, so injuries kind of hampered him. Phenomenal talent, and as you said, had an outside jump shot, had some frame to his muscle and stuff like that. And so there was just so many things of that Carolina team that you saw in that game that ultimately that's the team that lost Indiana in the Sweet 16, the Steve Alford game where he shut down Michael Jordan, as we always hear about, and Dan Dockage will always remind us about when he's on ESPN. But that was a really great team, and they knew how to win games late, and they did that in that game against Maryland, making the plays in the final 5 minutes or so to prevail them to a victory. Some other observations from the game that were just simply mind-boggling. They had a 45-second shot clock that stuck around as late as I know. It was still available in the 1993 season. I'm a guy that used to complain about 35 seconds, and I think 30 seconds today is still too long. I could not imagine having 45 seconds to get a shot off. That is an eternity in any sport, none less basketball.
Oh, that's a Tony Bennett wet dream right there. Let's be real honest. I couldn't imagine that. Hearing that after that, at the 4-minute mark of the second half, the shot clock turned off altogether. I know just from when I used to be a newspaper reporter here doing local high school basketball, seeing where they didn't have shot clocks would just get annoying, because you would have teams where if they were that much better than the team on the other side, they could hold the ball for 3-4 minutes if there wasn't a good shot there. And I could not imagine being able to do that at the college level. If you're up, just hold on to the basketball, and if you can find a way to keep it in your possession, running that clock all the way down. Of course, you said that you thought Carolina was, believe it or not, a little careless late in the game. But Yeah, there were so many rules that were different. I mean, getting used to the no 3-point line is still,